Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Archives. I am your host, Tima, the Master Archivist, and this is going to be kind of something different for the season of Bad Batch. We are here to do a new series, what I call the same name, different pronunciation, the Master Arc-hivist analysis. Been a lot of changes currently in the archive schedule, so it has led me to kind of bounce around. Been a little chaotic, but I kind of found the compromise here. The compromise being instead of doing every single episode every single week, we're doing basically a mid-season analysis and predictions, and then we're going to meet back at the end of the season, talk about kind of what we've seen, what we liked, what we didn't like, and pretty much, everything in more of a compact package. So we're still getting all the, all the Bad Batch videos, all the, Star Wars content out. Unfortunately, it's just more compact instead of the week by week. Positive the algorithm will love it. So pretty much figured that would be easier. Still get a chance to talk about what we've been seeing. So pretty much before we get started, consider liking, following, subscribing, all that good stuff here in the archives. Always appreciate the support. It's been honestly overwhelming recently, especially with recent videos I've uploaded have gotten great views. Last season was phenomenal, and I'm happy to be back. So with that being said, let me know from this video what you liked, what you didn't like. Same thing, let's talk about where we're going. So, but of course, before we can talk about where we're going, let's talk about where we started. So this is obviously season 3 of the Bad Batch. We have not only just we're kind of pulled all over the place for the season. So not only do we have Omega to keep up with, who was captured at the end of Bad Batch season 2. Sid ended up betraying the Bad Batch. Omega was taken Mount Tantus. The Bad Batch tried to infiltrate. It was Moff Gideon's compound, the Raven's Peak. That's on the planet Eridu. And then Crosshair, we saw from the last season 2, he turned his back basically in the Empire now, so he is held in Mount Tantus. So we already have our key players for the season thus far, Omega and Crosshair. Very cool to see their developments both together and separate through the season. And then we have Echo already left, joined Captain Rex about mid-season 2. So now we're going to have just Hunter and Wrecker. I will say, so this is gonna, this whole episode is basically just gonna go from episodes 1 to 8, I believe. I'm at episode, 1 to 8. So only 8 episodes have been released at the time of recording this. So just bear with me. By the time this comes out, we'll probably have episodes 9 or 10. Only 15 episodes this season, so we're at the halfway point. So let me see. So they're basically, that's where our key players are at right now, is we have Hunter and Wrecker. As we see for the first 3 episodes, they're actually taking on just mercenary jobs, trying to get information to find Mount Tantus, and that seems to be the arc of the season thus far, is locating Mount Tantus. Now, we're going to have some more key players involved in this as the season rolls on, but pretty much this is what we have right now. Omega, we get to see through the 3 episodes her day to day. So, of course, she was taken into Mount Tantus as a bargaining chip for Nalase to continue her Kaminoan research. Now, what that is, we never really get told specifically. We come up with some ideas here and there. What we do end up seeing throughout these 3 episodes, they are looking into the M count, which is played up for a mystery through these couple episodes. But M count, of course, we know is the midi-chlorian count. Since it wasn't directly said throughout the episodes, it just seems to be on the nose with that one. So the M count, midi-chlorian count, great cameo. Ian McDermott, Palpatine returned. Amazing. Somehow Palpatine returned. Which we learned this is all part of Project Necromancy. So this is basically, Palpatine's resurrection. A setup, or more of a damage control for episode 9. A lot of people mad about that over the couple years since episode 9 was released. We're just seeing a lot of damage control. Mando season 2 dealt with the cloning process. Obviously, Grogu was a which now I guess brings up a good point. Grogu was one of the characters, of course, involved in this project later in its lifetime. Of course, post episode 6, and Omega seems to be really one of the earlier subjects. That's a very interesting idea there. Something that just dawned on me right now. Anyway, so of course, too, we have Crosshair has been detained. So it was fun through these episodes. Omega was there for 5 months. We see her just go through the day to day, just helping Nalase. Nalase would take a blood sample from her and dispose of it. Of course, not brought up why that is yet. Of course, we learn it is for the M counts. And we also get not one of my favorite pieces to lore here. I think I mentioned in one of my older videos. Doctor, let me pull up the name. Actually, I don't remember her name off the top of my head. Oh yeah, Dr. Emery is a female clone. Gotta say, not my favorite bit of lore. I really enjoyed having Omega kind of as like that only female clone thus far. I felt like that really made a cool part of her character. Is like, oh my god, this is like the only female clone, genetically unmodified. And I honestly kind of thought they brought that up, not even as like a joke, maybe. I don't even know. Like the way it was brought up in season 2, Dr. Emery's like, "I'm just like you," and I'm like, I don't really know. Like that just seems so left field, I suppose. Now a lot of people had a problem with there already being a female clone. I thought that was, you know, I don't really think it made too much of a difference. They're willing to experiment on all these clones, especially the Bad Batch. Omega, I think, is the perfect fit for this entire group here. But that's the thing. I feel like it kind of took that from her. But throughout this season, we will touch upon it shortly. Well, I guess we'll touch upon it now, just because we're on the topic. Because in episode 3, when Palpatine comes to Mount Tantus to investigate, we end up seeing that Omega has a perfect M count for this project, Necromancy, meaning that Omega has a very high midichlorian count for Palpatine's, like pretty much his genetic material. So in his passing, his body transfer. Since they didn't really talk about it too much through episode 9, I'm assuming it's going to be kind of like how they did in Legends. He'll pass and transfer to the next body. I imagine that's kind of how it's going. And that, of course, gets Nalase in trouble because for that 5 months, she's taking Omega's blood sample, throwing it out, and they're like, oh, it's very interesting. The one time you don't do it, it comes up. Dr. Emery processes the blood sample. Why that's actually getting processed, Nalase helps Omega escape. So, it's all these things that really, I think, is great for Nalase's character, where through any interaction with Kaminoans, they do not care. It's about money and science. More science and pride in their work than money, I suppose. Kaminoans are not known to be emotional in any way, so Nalase is very much this outlier for the whole Kaminoan race, and I love that about her, because instead of it just being, run-of-the-mill Kaminoan, she has a very soft spot for Omega. And a lot of people bring up, it's probably for one or two reasons. Either it's that pride in her work, she's like, this is my clone that I made, it's phenomenal work, or it is in the motherly sense. I like to think of the motherly sense, but Kaminoans, you never really know. So let's see. So that brings us through episode 3. We do see Crosshair and Omega escape into episode 4. They're pretty much our unlikely duo. Oh, and they're also joined by their Lurchhound Batcher, Omega. So we get another addition here to the Bad Batch crew. Omega ended up domesticating a Lurchhound there on Mount Tantus, and she ended up naming him Batcher, and that ends up helping in their escape. So now our two groups here, we have Hunter and Wrecker doing their mercenary work, and then we have Crosshair, Omega, and the Lurchhound Batcher. So really cool. I mean, going into episode 4, this has to be, I think, my favorite one of the season thus far. Um, they ended up at a spaceport on the planet Lao, and the whole episode, I like the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of like your everyday interactions, I suppose, when it comes to the Empire. Because they're just incognito. Their ship crashes. It sustained damage during their escape, and they end up in this spaceport. And Omega decides to use some of the tactics she definitely learned, I think, from her time with Sid, to basically try to bribe the spaceport official to get them onto a shuttle, get them to go meet the Bad Batch. Get a little reunion going. And she ends up offering a bribe, and I forget what it came out to. Is I think it was like 30,000 credits, which I'm actually going to take a look. I think I have in my notes. I want to talk about currency exchange. I want to know what is the cost equivalent of everything. Did I put? Okay, I didn't put down how much it was. Oh no, sorry. Oh, I think it's 10,000 credits. I think it was. They need like 5,000 each. And I was like, what is the currency exchange in this universe, or is it just this planet? I was like, what is the cost of living? Anyway, so they end up playing this new game. I have to research what it was called. Against one of these Imperial officers, and I love this Imperial officer. Very much reminded me of the one from Andor. Um, he just very lethargic looking individual, very slimy character. Um, he was just very much an Imperial that is just thriving now that the Empire's taken over. This officer just taking bribes, just scamming people, sore loser. Like Omega ends up basically ringing him out for all these credits, and he ends up issuing fines. He steals Batcher, which brings Omega and Crosshair to this Imperial base. Really cool, like, transition there of, um, you know, just going with Crosshair throughout this episode. He is very much looking down on Omega to a good extent, also protective of her. He just wants to do the kind of things he knows will work. One of them is like just shooting all the Imperials, and she's like, let's try to take an easier approach. Bringing them to, of course, regardless, taking out pretty much that entire base, stealing a ship and escaping. And when they end up meeting with the Bad Batch, because Omega sends out a signal, she ends up reaching over to the Bad Batch, and when they meet, it's this phenomenal, I'll put the picture up, this phenomenal shot of the two ships right across from each other. Omega goes and meets, Wrecker and Hunter, and Crosshair ends up stepping out of the ship. And it's just a stare down from across, and we're seeing it panned out. Phenomenal shot. And it's very interesting because they're going to use it later as well. We'll talk on that in just a second. That was, I think that was, yeah, that was episode 4 or 5 right there. We're going just over kind of like the basic arcs here, and then I'm going to kind of ramble on about parts I really enjoyed. Yeah, that was, yeah, that was episode 4. So episode 5, called The Return. Um, yeah, so that one, cool episode. I like the return to the base Crosshair was at in season 2 with Mayday. Um, Gotta say though, it just felt like an average Bad Batch episode. It was really just, it was just a monster. It's a Bad Batch versus a monster. They did the same thing season 1, I think it was, with the Rancor. Just feels like that. It's like, our MacGuffin for this episode is this creature. They're trying to, they're trying to basically take this data pad of Nalase's that was given to Omega, access it through this Imperial base, and find out the location of Mount Tantus, but brought up that these sensors keep creatures away. Crosshair says it's raiders, but we learn that this giant creature, it just ends up being that's the whole episode, you know. So honestly, I should leave my ratings throughout this episode. So it really wasn't that much. Like even the only thing it really did in this episode is reestablish that trust and care between Hunter and Crosshair, because throughout the episode they do a fight amongst each other, and this kind of just sets them back on track to do better. But that's really like the only noteworthy thing through this episode. So that's the end of episode 5. Episode 6 was to me a setup for something great. So now, you know, we've met up with Echo again. Then they've taken all this and they're like, we're gonna go back meet Rex. And it feels like an early rebellion meeting. And Rex has this entire group of clones, and we're gonna end up seeing kind of why he doesn't have a lot of people going into Rebels, because he has like a great little legion going on. They're being monitored the entire time by Clone X, which we're familiar with Clone X from season 2 of Bad Batch. Clone X is just more of like a general term being used right now. It's an unidentified clones. These are clones that have basically undergone basically mental torture. They've had their memories wiped, their ID chips wiped. They do not exist, essentially. And they're basically trained to be these top tier assassins. Of course, we see, you know, I think it was Rex ended up taking one down. Yeah, Rex ended up taking one down season 2, and they end up using like that electroshock, essentially cyanide pill to, you know, unalive themselves. And really, I mean, cool thing. I thought that was going to be it. I thought they wouldn't expand upon that further, but apparently that is going to be an ongoing thing for this season, because throughout this entire episode we see a bunch of different clones. Let's see, we have Hauser has returned. Phenomenal. Looks like Hauser got broken out. Senator Singh returns, which is really cool. Senator Singh from Raxus. He's red. There's Rex. Fireball. A lot of cool clones have returned through here. Yeah, they mentioned Gregor. Gregor does show up at the end of the next episode. Very happy to see Gregor come back. You know, obviously he's going to play a part more in Rebels, but the fact that he's been included since season 1 and they continued with them, always happy to see Gregor. But this one is basically just them meeting up, talking, trying to investigate and interrogate this Clone X. But that one of the Clone X, they end up capturing one early in this episode. And this is where it's going to get confusing, because there are 2 Clone X's in this coming episode. So I'm kind of thinking ahead and on the last episode, because while they're investigating and interrogating into the actions of this Clone X, they do find a puck, a bounty puck for Omega. So it's starting to lead to a little more questions. Crosshair is aware of how Clone X is made, essentially, you know, through this torture and all. We get a little more information from Crosshair, and that they tried to do that to him, which negatively affected him through this season. He now has very shaky hands, very traumatized from this whole experience. Does not elaborate too much on it. But while they're doing this and they're, you know, interrogating this Clone X, there is another one outside of their fortress here. And basically, phenomenal work. It's like watching someone play a level of Hitman. He sets up explosives, he monitors everything, and very quick action ends up destroying most of this fortress in literally seconds. Of course, there's not too much time to respond. Everything's crumbling around them. But going into it, too, and this was one of the best parts, is at the end of episode 5, we find that Commander Wolf is now working with Scorch for the Empire. So, as this Clone X is, working these covert ops, they end up, Clone X ends up getting intercepted by Commander Wolf, who undertakes the entire operation. This is going to episode 7 called Extraction. Let's see, there's Clone Commander Hilo. Clone X, so I put in my notes here to expand upon, reminds me of how they use Purge Troopers at the end of pretty much the realm of the Fett clone DNA. I'm finding, and this is my favorite part of the Empire, and how they're, we're working on the transfer from the Republic to the Empire, is repurposing these clones. Not agreeing with how they're doing Clone X of, basically experimenting, torturing these clones to turn them into these assassins. But in the same way, it's like how they're doing Purge Troopers. The last of the Fett DNA created the Purge Troopers that we see in Jedi Fallen Order and also Kenobi. We saw this Purge Trooper Mark II. I find it very interesting how they're kind of repurposing, especially given last season's talk about how clones are basically just tools of the Empire. The Empire is finding different ways to use these tools. It's kind of like nothing's going to waste now that there are, still clones around. Let me see. So, as Clone X has basically wiped out most of Rex's forces, it was insane. Like I said, in one fell swoop, Rex and the Bad Batch and pretty much the rest of his couple clones try to escape. This Clone X, with perfect precision, shoots down one of the engines, ship goes down. Now it becomes the chase to an extraction point. So Rex calls over, Gregor's going to come intercept them, and it's just this chase. Clone X is going after the group. Crosshair ends up fighting with them, almost gets drowned, but luckily does escape with the help of Hauser. Clone X, I believe, Clone X ends up getting away, which a lot of people are theorizing that is Tech. If Tech, we haven't received any confirmation that Tech is alive, but considering where he fell, good possibility that he may be repurposed, as the Empire would say. We also did lose Nemec. That was one of the sad characters that we did lose here. Let me see. Oh yeah, and then the final scene here of this episode. This is episode 7 called Extraction. Wolf ends up coming down, talking to Rex, and given the opportunity to take them in, or even technically shoot them, Wolf actually lets Rex go. And when the clones, Wolf's forces ask him, like, why'd you do that? And he's like, well, they're clones. It's the least we can do for them right now. Because Rex goes to explain that the Empire's torturing and, reusing clones as these assassins. And, it's one of the things with the inhibitor chips, which is still being kind of fleshed out thanks to Bad Batch. We're kind of seeing how, the clones interact with these inhibitor chips. I guess because maybe it's not the use of Jedi, maybe, or Order 66 has passed so long. Wolf was very understanding and listening. We see, was it Jesse, I believe, season 7 of Clone Wars, does not want to hear anything from Rex. And it's just very interesting to me that there was this level of understanding. So I'm wondering if that's going to play more of a part later, But the way that they end the episode, it's that same shot, like when Crosshair and Hunter re-meet early in the season. Same thing with Rex and Wolf. Rex and them end up getting away. Really cool. I mean, this leads us to... this is episode 8. It's called Bad Territory. This one is actually kind of cool. I mean, this is, another side mission thing. Yet again, focusing on our key players for the season, Omega and Crosshair. Wrecker and Hunter are learning more about this M count. So, because of the Clone X bounty puck, they're like, we're going to go try to speak to more of the bounty hunters. So, the only one they know is Fennec. So of course we get to see Fennec again. I love her use pretty much since her introduction in Mando season 1. I thought she was gonna be like a throwaway bounty hunter, but the fact that they've really established her, I've enjoyed. But they basically speak to her, and she's like, "I don't know anything about it, but I know someone who does. I can lead you to them, but you gotta do a favor for me." So they end up going after a bounty. That's more of that arc of the episode. Very straightforward. They do capture the bounty. Um, the only thing you can't really trust Fennec, all things considered, especially when there's money in hand. She's like, "I'll get you in contact with my guy," and she also ends up, I believe, calling the Empire. They didn't specify who she was talking to. Basically, that like, "I know where this clone you're looking for is," you know. So basically routing them out, but that's the main arc of the episode. But I love the secondary arc because it's Omega and Crosshair. When Hunter leaves, he speaks to Omega and just says like, "Hey, do what you can to try to get Crosshair checked out and help him." Omega's like, "I'll do what I can," and they actually start meditating, and that was the thing I enjoyed because Crosshair wouldn't receive too much help from AZ, the of course Kamino medical droid that was there to assist. Um, so Omega's like, "I learned this from Gunji, and especially now given the whole M count thing and her time with Gunji and the Wookiees, I see what they're doing. They're making her like the Jedi clone now. Not saying I'm opposed to, but I do really enjoy sometimes Star Wars without the Jedi mysticism. So where they're going with this, I really hope it's not going to. I hope it is going to complement everything that we've expanded upon with Omega. Um, Making her a Jedi, I hope doesn't overshadow anything. It's tough. It's we're entering like a territory that's tough that because you don't want to do something like a lot of people have the problem with Rey, where she learned everything way too fast. And this one's kind of like, all right, where does Omega sit, especially this time frame of the galaxy? Where does she fit into everything? And I suppose that could be its own series if they decide to spin this off. Is where does she fit into this entire picture? It's just weird given the time frame. Because we don't know what happens to the Bad Batch post this season, like because they're not brought up in anything else. So Omega, Hunter, all of them, where do they fit into this? Now Omega has this bigger footing going forward. Where does she fit into all this? Now not only is she a clone, a relic of the Republic, but she's also a potential Force user, potential Jedi, a relic, of the time already. Very interesting. I don't know where it's all going to go, but I'm interested to see. I like what they've done with the characters thus far, and this season is no exception. Um, so we're going to leave that as it is. That is the end of episode 8. We're at the halfway point. Let's kind of go into things I really enjoyed about this season. So this is kind of like the Easter eggs and little footnotes that I have for the season. That's just the arc where we're at with everything. So let's just talk about some really cool things that they added.